What type of home educator are you? Conviction or convenience? There's a quote from somebody you'll probably recognise, Nelson Mandela. Strong convictions are the secret of surviving deprivation. Your spirit can be full even when your stomach is empty. That was about his situation. If you've got conviction, you will be fighting for what's good for you and your family and for other people. If what people are saying is good for you and others, and you've not got a conviction about it, you'll take it or leave it. And I think before this session got going, we're actually touching on some of that there. Okay, I'm not majoring on this bill. By the way, that isn't its real name on the wrecking ball, right? That's partly Michelle came up with the surveillance bit and I added the woe bit. The Children's Woe and Surveillance Bill. The real name is down there, the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill. But I want to say to you that is not the only bill you should be concerned about. There's a data bill gone through, there's many other bills going through, and right now your privacy and your data is really being taken by force by the state. And I'm saying the state, there's a difference between state and government. There's about, well, under Boris there was 120 people in the government. Then there was the Parliament with all the MPs and the peers, and then you have the state, which is all the civil service and everything like that. And the civil service is behind a lot of what's happening and going on, and that is the situation. Tony Blair said, with William Hague, two very politically different people, about 2 years ago on data protection, what we need is all parties to have the same policy, so when there is a change of government, there is no change of policy. And what have we seen? We've seen a Conservative government go out and a Labour government bring back most of their bills in a different form, but with this particular one, it's on steroids. They've let the civil service have what they want. So it's not just about one party, it's about the state I'm talking, but this is the bill. Anybody not heard of it before now? Liar! For the recording, Michelle Zahir put a hand up, and she is not true. Right?
Split personality.
I've heard it, but I don't know the full intent of it, to be honest.
Right, well, I'm not dealing with that. There'll be other people dealing with it. But what it is, it's a big data grab. And the key point isn't about home education. The key point is this: they are introducing a unique identifier for every child, which they want to use the NHS number for, which will mean that every child from now on into adulthood will have data stored on them by the government without consent of parents or children, or the children themselves. And that data is vulnerable, it will be shared, it will be used, fed through AI to say whether this child is thriving or not, and many things like that. The home education stuff is really bad. It's state surveillance. The word on that wrecking ball is there because it is surveillance. Happy to chat with you more afterwards about that. What I want to do is set a background for it. So, where's this particular bill up to? I'm going to try and do a 3-minute summary of where it's up to. It's completed all its stages in the House of Commons. Whoops, wrong thing. There we go. It has had its second reading in the House of Lords. It's partway through the committee stage. They keep playing with the dates. It was hoping, I think they wanted it through before now, the committee stage. The final sitting is on the 18th of September. That is also the day the House of Lords rises for the conference recess, which is near 3 weeks. So once they've got to that stage, everything will pause. Report stage comes next. That will be after the recess. they should have, if they stick to protocols, 7 sitting days. No more than 2 a week. So that's going to take it over 3.5 weeks. There's another recess, half-term recess, which is a short recess, early in November. I think the House of Commons one is longer. This is a short one. So I don't think the report stage will start till after the 10th of November. No, I don't think it'll finish till after the 10th of November. I can't see them getting in the gap. They might surprise me. Very quick are the third reading and passing, which happen on the same day, and that is likely in early November, late November or early December. It then goes to consideration of amendments, or as it's commonly called, ping pong. What is ping pong? It goes back to the House of Commons to look at any amendments made by the Lords. They either accept them or reject them. If they reject them, it comes back to the Lords, and it can do that several times, but it's not an infinite process, and they get to this point where the Commons says, Lords, you give way. We've got the stronger hand here. We are the elected chamber. And after it's got through that process, it will get a royal assent, which may well be in December. But that isn't the end of the matter. That's just before Christmas. And if that happens, expect a new statutory guidance, a consultation on new statutory guidance for home education to be done over the Christmas period or very early in the new year. And implementation, I think they like it as soon as possible. It could be autumn next year, 12 months' time. I don't know. It all depends what else goes on. But that is where the bill is at the moment. Now, that's not really what I want to talk about in this session. If that bill goes through, with all its atrocity of massive data collection put on the responsibility of parents and anybody who's involved in a child's education, what will you do? How will you respond when that bill's brought in? 3 possible options: fight, flight or freeze. There's actually a 4th. It's this one. How many home educators? An awful lot. Alison was saying earlier, an awful lot are doing that. And there's even some home education organisations encouraging people. This won't change. This won't make it worse. It will. And how are you going to respond? Oh, by the way, in case you're wondering, that isn't a joke picture. It was a bunch of demonstrators in 2014 protesting against the Australian government's climate change policy. I am grateful to all the people who've left graphics lying around on the internet for me to borrow. As I'm not putting them in the book or charging you for this seminar, I'm not quoting them in the copyright. Now here's an interesting graphic. Why have I put a birthday cake there? It's to remind me, you see, I just want to do an age check. It's not I want to know whether I'm the oldest person here, but I'll find that out in the process. How many of you were born in the 1940s? How many of you were born in the 1950s, apart from Mary and myself? We're the oldest people here, love. Right, how many in the 1960s? Right, 3. Right, 1970s? Oh, a few more. 1980s? Yeah. And 1990s? Yes. 2000s? Anybody after that? No, right. Why have I done that? Well, I'll come to that in a minute, but I needed to establish that there was nobody older than me for a reason, which I will explain. But before I do that, I want to talk about it's important to understand why education freedom is being removed. And this isn't just about the bill, and it's not just about education. It's to do with what's happening in society. How many of you have heard of that book before? No, neither had I actually, till I did some research on this, but it's provided me with everything. Utopia. You know what utopia is? We'll come on to that a bit more in a minute. It was an experiment. The Goodreads, can I just say as well for everybody, there's a slide at the beginning, there'll be one at the end, which I'll put all the links to this talk on that page. It's got the link for you, so you know you can make your notes, but I am going to provide you with the links. This it's a book written about by somebody who wanted to know what it would be like after an apocalypse. That's an interesting word. We use it for a disaster. That isn't what it means in Greek. If civilization came to an end. So a guy, the author of the book, Dylan Evans, set out to answer these questions. He left his job in a high-tech robotics lab, moved to the Scottish Island, got a bunch of eccentric volunteers, widespread, and they tried to live out that scenario, right? Free from modern technology and comforts. Within a year, Evans found himself detained in a psychiatric hospital, shattered and depressed, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. And the book's about that story. I've not read it, but that is a warning about trying to live in utopia, if anything was. Okay, now, utopia and not working, there's a book you may be more familiar with about what people hope to be a utopia falling apart. What has this to do with the CWS bill and all the other moves against home education in England, Wales and Scotland, and many other countries as well, and not to forget Northern Ireland, it's just not on the slide, and around the world? Okay, anybody have a guess what that is? If you know Latin, you might be able to read it if you were close enough. It is a map of the original utopia. The word was invented, coined by Sir Thomas More in 1516 for his book, which he called Utopia. And he named that, created that name because in Latin it literally means no place, not place. It means no place. Now you may think some people, you may have read somewhere, people use another Greek word rather than the OU, EU, which means good. Some people think it means good place, but it actually means no place. What he was saying was, you'll never have a world like this. Life is not like that. Okay, so here's my main point for today. Why I wanted to know your ages. I can confidently say every person in this room has been living in the midst of an international utopian experiment. We have all been. We were not recruited for it. None of us volunteered for it. I wasn't told about it until recently, relatively recently. We have all been living through an international experiment to try and build a utopia on the earth. Very easy to market. Who here would prefer to live in a world without wars? Stick your hands up. Most people would. How do you achieve that?
Control. Under the government.
It's impossible. Because you've got to have people who respect everybody else. And we live in a world where it only takes one person not to respect somebody and things start to go wrong. It is an impossible thing. But the world population was sold this dream of a world without war. And we thought it was wonderful. Our parents did. Oops, sorry. Yep. Okay. Let me give you quick evidence. I'm not going into the full details. Have you ever heard of Brock Chisholm before? He was the first Director General of the World Health Organization. You may not have heard of the World Health Organization before the year 2000. Most of you will have heard of it since. And he said this, children must be free to think in all directions, irrespective of the peculiar ideas of parents who often seal their children's mind with preconceived prejudice. Unless we are very, very careful indeed and very, very conscientious, there is still a great danger that our children may turn out to be the same kind of people as we are. And that's the source where it was quoted. Some of us were talking over lunch. Government policy is getting more and more. It wants to break the bond between a child and its parents, its mother in particular, from the very earliest age. I watched a video by a Send charity where a mother was told that her daughter isn't settling in school because she's too attached to her mother. So please stop hugging her at home and leave her to get hugs from the teachers in school. Yeah. And why do they want children in childcare from the age of 9 months?
Pay taxes.
Yeah. Well, they want people to work, but they also want them not to be attached to their parents. And there's a textbook from Finland. I've got the details with me. I wasn't going to say this, but I'll just tell you. It's for about 11 to 14-year-olds, and then it says, wouldn't it be wonderful if we lived in a world where you could have babies without being pregnant? Artificial wombs, choose your partner, that's it. Where is the bonding? A lot of the bonding between mothers in particular and their children happens while the child is growing in the womb. I think this is all part of that. But, there's somebody you might be a bit more familiar with who likes this utopian agenda. You know this lady? Bridget Phillipson. You may not know him. He's now the head of Ofsted. And he decided not to implement something as quickly as Phillipson wanted to in June, and she wrote a letter telling him off, but it began, the first substantial paragraph read this, and listen to the utopian jargon. I've highlighted it with underlining and with italics. Ofsted's work is essential to this government's mission to break down barriers and open up opportunities, setting every child up for success, helping every child to achieve and thrive at school, and building skills for opportunity and growth so that every young person can follow the pathway that's right for them. Phillipson is the queen of jargon. Dogma. Yes, Robin, it's dogma. And this is a utopian dream. You cannot have children who come out of education all identical. We don't want them. We need a world of people who are different. But this is the type of utopian jargon you can hear more and more in politics. Now, question for you. In less than 5 words, anybody want to say what the purpose of government is? Control.
To govern.
To govern. Thank you. I was going to say the clue's there, you see, in the name. It's to govern. And the government can only justify its existence if it finds more and more things to govern. Becomes control. Right? So, we're going to press on, if my clicker does. Okay. Very quick, and I hope this is helpful, an overview of the political landscape. You may not get it from there, but that is a one-dimensional view of politics, left and right. Most of us only think about politics in that direction. What if there's another axis? Authoritarian to libertarian. Now, we're a bit stuck these days for extremes, and there's a bit of a green blur in behind that compass, and I haven't given it a sound border because I don't want to say where the extremes are, right? But if we talk about far left, far right, extreme right. What is extreme libertarianism? Anybody want to come up with the answer?
Anarchy.
Anarchy, right? What is extreme authoritarianism?
Dictatorship.
Dictatorship, totalitarianism? Right. Where's the best place for any government to place itself on that? You see, there's another dimension as well, really, and it's hard to do on a flat screen, so you're going to use a circle.
Best for who?
Best for society, right?
In the middle.
In the middle, right? Not too far left, not too far right, not too authoritarian, not too... There's a good place in the middle. Now, you can't keep that. Reason they want to keep prices rising is because it's more stable to have a steady increase than it is to have a stationary one, because then it jerks. But in reality, most governments do something like that. That is not, don't connect the right and the libertarian and the left and the authoritarian. It just moves around in that area. But notice, it needs to stick within that close to that middle position and keep itself tight there. But what happens if it begins to get bigger? All right? Now, the government has suddenly woken up and found new ways to have more things to govern. That's what bureaucracy is about. Okay? I've said it's gone upwards for one reason. I didn't draw it in the middle purposely. Because governments govern. And to govern, you have got to take authority, responsibility from your citizens and transfer it to the state. So that is what you've got to do. Governments have to govern. So the authority, if they expand, they have a bias towards the authoritarian side. Now, if they could stick in the middle, it would look like that. But they don't. And it doesn't matter which side you go to. Right? If they stuck in the middle on the left to right, even on the right they would become, they grow. As the state gets bigger, it grows in all dimensions. So, I've tried to balance it out there. If we move on quickly and we see this is more what will happen, it doesn't matter right or left. The bigger the state gets, the more authoritarian it gets. The more you have to do what you're told. The more they want to know what colour your toilet paper is. To be silly. But that's the way it goes. They want to know who you associate with. They want to know who else is teaching your children, if you're home educating them. They need more and more. And this is what's happening today. And as I said, this isn't a left or right issue. It is a matter of the state. And when it gets really big, it gets very near the limits. And I sense, not fear, I sense that is where we're at. And things have been reacting. Alison, you said a while back that you were having a coffee with your daughter and she mentioned some Greek guy who said rights are coming. Right?
Yeah.
It's happened before. And they're acting. I find it really strange that the established parties talk about populists, politicians. Excuse me, to win an election, you have to be popular with the people. Think about the language that's being used. They want to do things that are unpopular, so they tell you not to vote for the people who want to do things that are popular. That's how it's going. Okay. And what I'm saying here is we cannot detach what's happening with home education from what is in the bigger picture. The freedom to home educate is being leached away. Why? Because it gives, Brock Chisholm's point of view, too much contact, influence of the parent on the child. No other reason. We've all been involved in an international experiment, utopian experiment. Consequently, governments have been getting bigger. Over my lifetime, governments have taken on more responsibility, They've taken more responsibility off citizens. This is what's been happening. Responsibility has been leached away from citizens, parents and families irrelevant to this, to the state. Family-based learning, also known as home education, is perceived to be a threat to that experiment. Brock Chisholm, previous years I mentioned Julian Huxley, and others. And even now, UNESCO is wanting an international conversation, really trying to get states to turn away from allowing home education. Governments fear what they don't understand and what they cannot control. Fact of life. However, I want to say to you, this utopian experiment is failing. The biggest one was 3 years ago, when the Secretary General of the United Nations stood up in the General Assembly and said, I have hoped this moment would never come. And he said that on the day that Putin announced a special military operation in Ukraine. And we're never going back to the day before that. This experiment is crumbling like it couldn't do anything else, because it was based on a lie that we could live in a utopian world. And because of why? Well, governments do not fight for justice for their citizens. Do you agree with me on that? But families do. And I want to give you some quick fire examples from British society in recent years. Horizon Post Office scandal. Infected blood scandal. Governments have dragged their feet. This was Windrush. Not as long as the other two, but Windrush. And by the way, down in the bottom corner you might just see the words Hillsborough. Now I'm afraid these pictures are pretty poor even on a good screen because they're that old, and it took years. And just this week, and I think it's a political move than anything else, Labour to get back at Thatcher, but they've announced an inquiry 41 years late after the Battle of Earlsgrave, miners' strike days, some of you remember it. My wife got me lost in the middle of Scotland and we found ourselves between a big crowd of striking miners and a big crowd of policemen, and we just kept driving. But not just that. National Health Service hasn't been without scandals that have had to have inquiries. And why? Because families have fought for justice. And we won't spend too much on those, the child sexual exploitation scandals, but I'm making a point. I'm making a point that when things go wrong, governments protect themselves, families fight for justice. And it is up to ordinary people, families, to fight for justice and to resist bills. And it's not just this children's well-being in schools, but as I'm saying, it is far more than that. Data protection, we need to be aware on that one. Now, my question though is this: have the families in these examples I've given you, and in the many I've not listed, been motivated by conviction or convenience? Conviction. Not convenient. Some people find it very convenient to home educate, you know. It helps them out an awful lot. But if they aren't doing it out of conviction that it's the best option, they'll let it go when the going gets tough. Have these families, the families in these examples, had an impact because of their convictions or because it was convenient for them? Because of their convictions. It was downright inconvenient. Will home educating families make an impact by conviction or convenience? And that's where my title comes in, really. What type of home educator are you? Going back to an earlier slide, fight, flight, freeze, head in the sand. Which are you? Only those who value it enough for it to cost them as almost everything will stand on this. Others will stand back and say somebody else will do it for me. You know, a lot of us just like people to hold the door open so we can keep walking through it. But the real question I've got is how many of you are going to fight for this? Okay, now some closing observation. As I say, after this finishes, we'll take a few questions when I've finished. We'll talk about things. After that, I'll be out there in the foyer, happy to keep on talking. And I'm back on Friday and hopefully Sunday, so we'll be around. But there's Alison, there's Michelle, there's Anne, there's Judith, there's others right here. We need to keep talking. We do need to keep this one going. Okay, my feeling is this, that the bill will probably go through without significant amendments in respect to the freedom of home education, or freedom to home educate or to be home educated. We cannot directly change the prevailing political opinion in time. We are outliers when it comes to the failing international search for the mythical utopian universe. However, I do believe we can change the public narrative by engaging in multiple arenas. How many of you here heard the name of Sarah Sharif? Yeah, the girl who was murdered by her parents and then they went to Pakistan. How many of you here heard the name of Kyra Ishak? A few, not as many. Kyra Ishak was the Shara Sharif of 2009. Ed Balls invoked her name along with his bill, which first brought in registration. Same narrative. You tell the public this is terrible. This can't keep happening. And it's not the state's fault, it's the parents' fault. What happened with Kyra Ishak? The serious case review discovered it was really the fault of Birmingham Social Services. Oh, of course, home education contributed. They had to add that in. But really, the state didn't do its job. We don't know what the result would be, but if you've read any of the material in the thing, Sarah Sharif, there was a care hearing about her before she was born with her siblings. And she's been known to social services throughout. It wasn't home education. I understand she was known to Guildford Surrey's home education department. And they had no questions. It was not there. So we can change the public narrative. And I have to say, and I'm going to say it again, data collection and the other bills that are going through right now are one of the best things. Look, the SEND crisis has finally got messy. People have been saying in this country for some time the SEND system is in meltdown. And no politician's been listening. But for some reason it's hit the fan. And the government turned the fan up the other day when they said we're going to do away with tribunals. They're not interested in justice. They just don't want to spend money. And we need to have common cause with other parents, other families. And we need to say, now the big difference is this, I'll tell you what the big difference is. There are many families who think the government have a responsibility to educate their children. And that's not right. The responsibility for the education of children rests with parents. But after several generations of free schools and free state schools for all children, people have got it in their heads, well, I don't have to educate my child, I just got to drop them off with the government, and the government will do it. But the government's taking more and more of that responsibility. And people don't make the connection between our concerns and their real concerns. So most people, and many people, think we've got to stop the government failing. Well, I want to say to them, you'll never stop the government failing because it's made up of people. And people don't do what's right, they do what's convenient. Right? And the government, but we've got to make common cause. We've got to say our children need to be able to do what's best for them, irrespective of what the state thinks, because the state doesn't know them. The old ones come out. Somebody were talking earlier. Some local authorities are now wanting to be able to say to children, do you want to be home educated? How many local authorities are saying we need to ask every school child if they want to go to school? They're too frightened to do it. Right? We've got to get in there and we've got to change the public narrative on bigger things. I think home educators with this bill will probably have to resort to the courts. I want to say that is fraught with dangers. We need the right case and we need the best grounds. It's got to be taken by somebody who thinks, and we've got to have the funds. If it's going, should not take legal action unless you can raise at least £150,000 to go right through the legal system. Now, there may be people who will help out on that, but you can't do it on the cheap. It has got to come from somewhere. I think if we're going to stop this bill, that is the best thing. What stage it's the best, I don't know. If we're going to have to take action, of course, we could always hope that something goes bad internationally and distracts everybody, right? And they wouldn't have time. That's it. However, I want to say to you today, now is the time to think about what you will do if a big government presses ahead with taking your family's freedom away. Only you know if your commitment to facilitating your own children's learning is based on your convictions or it's a matter of convenience. So, yep, there you are. By the way, you might not see it in this light, but did anybody, when I showed that earlier, notice anything unusual about that graphic? Some of you have seen it. I put it on a poster when I went down to London and to Cardiff for the protest. Anything unusual about it? If you get a wrecking ball and knock it against the side of the building, which one breaks apart and which one stops intact?
The building breaks.
The building breaks. What's breaking in that? Can you see it?
No. Oh, the wrecking ball.
The wrecking ball's breaking. If people stand firm, I want to say, I think we can do it. But it has got to be a wall of conviction. It is no good if it's convenience, because when you see a big wrecking ball coming to you, there. I've got hope. That's it. I'm going to leave that up there.